All right, this is quiz review. I just wanted to show how to do the problems and where mistakes may happen. We'll do quiz review for problem one. So problem one, part A. All of these we are just combining we are just simplifying as much as we can. You're not going to be able to solve these because there is no equal sign, but we can simplify these down as much as we can. A is the trickiest one, but if we remember, whenever we're simplifying, that when you see parentheses like this, there should be a 1 in front of the parentheses. There's a little hidden 1 right there. It means that there is one set of 4x plus 2's, and then we are subtracting one set of 9x's and one set of 3's. So anyway, another way to think about this. So some people did a good job and they just went through and subtracted things, but I recommend, because students get confused about that, I recommend changing everything to adding. So this subtraction right here, minus 1, needs to change to adding negative 1 times 9x squared plus 3. And then we still have these parentheses, and they're a little bit confusing, but to get rid of them, what we do is we do the distributive property. So we multiply, if we know we have one set of 4x's, then we can just write down that that is 4x's, and that will get rid of our parentheses there. But we also need to remember that we have one set of 2's, and that is going to create one set of 2's is just 2. So this part we would rewrite as 4x squared plus 4x plus 2. And then on the other side, and this is where a lot of students went wrong, because they didn't do keep, change, change, or just because they weren't paying attention to the fact that this was a subtraction sign and that everything in here was being subtracted, negative 1, what we have is we do not have a 9x squared. We actually have one negative set of 9x squared. So 1 times negative 9 is going to equal negative 9 squared, right? The math we did was negative 1 times 9x squared. And then we also have to do negative 1 times 3. Negative 1 times 3, and negative 1 times 3 is negative 3. So when I add these together, I can only add together things that have the same last name. So I see 4x squared, and 4x squared only has the same last name as this other x squared over here, so I can only add those together. 4, what I do is I just add the numbers in front. So 4 plus negative 9 is negative 5, so this becomes negative 5x squared. The total of 4x squared and negative 9x squared is negative 5x squared. Then we have 4x, and there are no other terms that are the same as 4x, so we're just going to rewrite that as we are adding 4x to the mix. I know I'm adding because there's a plus sign in front of it. And then the last terms that we have are 2 and negative 3, and they're all being added. So when I do 2 plus negative 3, I get negative 1, so this is just going to be plus negative 1. It would have also been correct if you would have written negative 5x squared plus 4x minus 1. That's also true. And if you switched these orders around at all, then you still got it correct. Things that students did that were mistakes were instead of seeing this as a negative, they did 4x squared plus 9x and got 13x squared, which is wrong. Everybody got 4x correct because they knew they couldn't, or almost everybody got 4x correct because they knew they couldn't combine it with anything else. But the other thing that students did was they said, oh, it's 2 plus 3, but they forgot that everything in here was being subtracted and that it should really be 2 minus 3, and so they came up with 5 instead of 1. Sometimes negative 5 instead of 1. Moving on to B. B works the same way. This one's easier actually because there's no tricky parentheses, but I do again recommend that you go through and you change all of your subtraction to adding negative, adding the opposite it means the same thing, but it just saves you confusion. So then I look for my like terms. My first term that I see here is 20. So all of my other terms that have to do with 20, I have 20 plus -3. And I know that 20 plus -3 is 17. And then I also have plus 10. So 17 plus 10 is 27. So there should be 27 ones in this. When I look around, I see that there are there is an x, or there are 2 xy's here, but there are no other xy's, so I'm just going to keep that as 2xy. And then the last one, I'll draw a little line to connect that right here. And then the last one is, let's draw my arrowheads here just to be really clear about where these are coming from. The last one is the y squareds, and again, we have a positive and a negative. If you did not do keep, change, maybe you came up with 5y squared plus 9y squared and came up with 14y squared here. But if you are remembering that the 9 is negative and that it is going down and that you are not adding it, then you would get 5y squared plus negative 9y squared is going to equal negative 4y squared. And then you should write it in the order, usually we want to write these in the order where the thing of the largest magnitude goes first, but and then the thing of the lowest magnitude, something with no x's or y's on it, would go last. So I would want to write it like this normally, but any order that you wrote these in would technically be correct. So either one of those is fine. This one, just about everybody got this one correct, but this one cannot be simplified. There are no like terms here. There's an x and a y, there are x's and y's, and we can't add those together, so we cannot combine. You could have also said that it is already simplified. Cannot combine terms. I should be more clear. Already simplified. And then the last one, this one was a trick. I made this one highly proficient. If you think about it hard enough, then you could have this make sense. But this one, so what we have here is we have 2n, and all of 2n is getting multiplied by everything inside. And most students knew that. But the question is, what do you get when you multiply these? Students, when they're doing the distributive property, know that if there's a number out here and it gets multiplied by 4n or something like that, that it would just be the number times the 4 and then the n. So, and the same thing like this. So 2n times 8 would be just like that, and that would be 2 times 8 is 16, so 8 sets of 2n would be 16 n's. But this is the tricky one. 4 times n times 2n. What this means is, so 2 times n times 4 times n is what's happening here. And so I know that 2 times 4 is 8, and most students said this was 8n. But this is actually 8n times n, which means that it's really 8n squared, right? We know that 2n times 4 should be 8n, but you have this other n that needs to also get multiplied. So 8 times n becomes 8n squared, and that is the trick. And this was a highly proficient question, so if you missed this one, no big deal. But if you got it right, bonus points for you. And then we have this 1n out here. So I would have 8n squared plus 16n plus 1n, and if I simplify that, I can combine 16n and 1n, and that would give me 17n. So my final simplified value would be 8n squared plus 17n. Remember, I cannot combine 8n squared. There's my 8n squared. That cannot be combined with 17 with the n's, because an n squared is different than an n. So that's how we simplified all of the first problems on quiz 1. Your job now is to go back and see what you missed and see if you can solve it.